Hello everyone. So today we are going to cover the asynchronous apex part, and within the asynchronous apex, we'll be focusing mostly on the future methods. And we will talk about the interview questions on future method. We will talk about the different ways we have in the asynchronous apex, when to use it, why to use it, when not to use it. So all those things we are going to cover. Okay. Focus again will be on doing things practically. Okay, but before the actual practical things, I'll also talk about couple of the fundamentals, theoretical things as well. So basically, what is asynchronous apex? Okay, asynchronous apex is basically uh, you can say that it's a process whenever you need to run something in the background. Okay, whenever you don't need something to to be executed immediately, you have something which you can run in the background, and you don't require the results of that thing right now. Okay, you are okay that if that thing executes in the back end and you will get the results later rather than immediately, then those are the things you can move to the asynchronous apex. Okay, there will be few things of which you will be requiring the results to be presented right now in front of you. Okay, those things cannot be moved to the asynchronous part, right? Like, let's say you have a process that every time you update the opportunity, okay, you will also update the quote line items, or you will also update the quotes of it, but this needs to be done immediately because then you need to send that quote to the customers for the approval. Okay, so this is something which you want to be executed immediately. You cannot wait for this thing to get executed because your next step is dependent on the results of your first step. Okay, so whenever you will be needing the results of your first step immediately so that you can process further, and you cannot wait for the result, then you will not you will do those things in the synchronous apex. Okay, like in the triggers, like in the flows, like in the process builders. But whenever you have something, let's say every time you create an opportunity, a task should also be created, or you should also create a task for let's say someone who is working on that particular case. So you have created a case. Yeah, let's say you need to create a task as well for your customer support executive to look into the case, but that is something which you don't want to be executed right now. Like, case got created and you created a task, and you will send that task to the case representative, but it is not something which needs to be done straight now, right now. Okay, it could, I mean, it is okay if it takes some time and do it in, let's say, a couple of minutes or something in the back end, because you do not need that task to do anything. Okay, so whenever you have something to do where you don't require the results right now, because you do not need those results to perform the further action on that process, then you can move those things to the asynchronous apex. Okay, like you are downloading a movie, so you put the download in the back end, but you will keep on doing your own work. Your back end process, your background process will not halt your work. You will keep on doing your work, whereas in the backend it will keep on processing as well. But in the synchronous, you will not be able to do anything unless your process finish executing. Like, you started your computer, you will not be able to do anything till the time bootstrapping happened, and till the time your computer starts. So that is something which is a synchronous process, and that requires you to wait for the result. But in the asynchronous process, you need not to be worried about the result. It will get executed in the backend whenever the resources will be available. Okay, in the Salesforce, in the multi-tenant environment, it is very important for you to utilize the resources in the best possible manner. Okay, so asynchronous apex is a way for you to get more governor limits. Okay, to handle the high workload in more efficient manner. Let's say you have to process the 10 million records. It will be really difficult for you to do with the triggers, because data size, data chunk is huge. So Salesforce has given you the option of asynchronous apex, where by this you will get the higher governor limits, you will get the higher execution time. You can do everything in the back end, and yet you can keep on doing your synchronous thing in the front end. So these are really good for the resources conservation. Okay, Whenever resources will be available, your asynchronous process will happen. Okay. So whenever we have to bypass the governor limits, whenever we have to do the callouts to web service, whenever we have to handle the higher workload like thousands or millions of record, okay, then we use the asynchronous apex. Okay, I have created notes for this. I think I've already given notes for the future methods, but I'll resend it again. So we have four different ways to do things asynchronously in Salesforce. Okay, we have future method, we have queuable epics, we have schedulable epics, and we have batch epics. Okay, now these four are different options given to us, but they all have different use cases. Like, if there is a use case for future method, you will not use batch epics for that. Okay, from the interview point of view, they will ask any illogical question, like you can call batch from a future from a batch, and all the illogical things they will keep on asking, and we will cover that as well. But from your Salesforce developers point of view, you understand that these four are the four different things. Okay, they cannot be used interchangeably. Okay, these are the things which have their own use cases. Okay, so if there is a use case to use future method, you will not use queuable epics for that. Or if there is a use case for batch epics, you will not use future method for that. So they have their own use cases, and it is the best idea to use the particular asynchronous apex in their own use cases, not to just for the sake of doing. Okay, so future method is the kind of the easiest one to understand, because it does not have any interface involved. You need not to implement anything, and it is very basic, very easy, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. And then comes the queuable epics. Future methods are mostly used whenever we have to do some call outs from the trigger, so that thing can be handled via future method really well. Okay, then comes the queuable epics, which is the advanced version of future method. It covers couple of limitations of future method, and it has its own use case whenever you have to perform something sequential. Okay, something which by which you can chain couple of things together, so that second thing will only run when the first thing will finish executing. Okay, so then you will use the queuable epics. Then comes the schedulable epics. Whenever you have to schedule your work like daily or weekly tasks, you want to schedule every week, then you will use it. And the last one is the batch epics, which you will use whenever you have to do the some performance or some activities on the bulk record or the huge data set. Then you will use the batch epics. Okay, now let me open the developer console. When we were doing trigger, we already have created one future method. So that I'm going to open again. Okay, this is your future method. Future methods are just like the normal Salesforce method. You just need to use the @future annotation with it, and this basically tells the Salesforce execution engine that this is a asynchronous apex future method. Okay, so this annotation basically makes a method future. Otherwise these are just like a simple normal Salesforce methods. The thing which you need to remember with future method is that future method will always be static, and they will always return void, so they cannot return anything. And the
Uh,
logic,
Mohit,
sorry.
I have one question. What are the reason behind future @future only writing in a inside of class, not in inside of method? Any reason?
See, you cannot make a class future. Okay, class cannot be future. Only methods can be future. Okay, so whichever method you want to make future, you need to use the annotation @future in front of that method. This class could contain couple of other methods as well, which may not be future. Okay, so class basically is just a container which will contain multiple methods. Few of those methods can be future methods. So whichever methods are future method, you need to use the @future annotation. You cannot make whole class future. Okay, this is not a class level annotator. Okay,
Sure.
and what I was telling you is that future method should always be static and void. Okay, so interviewer may ask you why future method is not returning anything, or why we cannot return anything from the future method. Okay, so the simple logic behind is that future method will run in its own, execution time, and in its own thread. Okay, so by the time future method run, your normal class, your normal synchronous transaction will finish executing, and this will run in its own thread. So if we allow something to be returned by this future method, then you might be trying to you might try to use that thing in your synchronous epics, but you will never get anything at that time, because at that time when you try to use the value returned by future method might not have get executed. Okay, so that is why, because it is running its own thread and you are not sure when it will get executed, Salesforce has not allowed you to pass any data from future method to anything. They have not allowed you to return anything from the future method. They'll always be void, because if you try to use the results returned by future method in your synchronous transaction, there might be and there are very high chances that you will not get anything in return, because future method might not get executed at that time. So to avoid any such type of problems, Salesforce has not allowed you to return anything. You want to perform something asynchronously, just pass that data to, say, a future method, and it will perform, but it will not return anything. So be very sure about what you want to perform in the future method, because they will not return anything. So if you want to get the results from future method, you will not get any results. You will get the execution to be done, but you will not get anything in return. Okay, and why they are static? Because future method belongs to can be called from any other classes as well. They are not dependent on any particular instance of any class. Okay, because by the time, again, same logic, by the time when future method will execute it, that instance might get finished. So that transaction will be finished, because that was the synchronous transaction, and this will be a asynchronous transaction which you are not sure when it will get executed. So to avoid any possible issues related to transactions and related to what you are returning from it, Salesforce has imposed this rule that future method will always be static, and they will not be able to return anything. Okay, but be very sure that interviewer will try to trick you on these things, that why they are static, or why we cannot return anything. So you just make sure that, because synchronous transaction will finish executing at the same time, but asynchronous will not be executed on the same time, and you will never sure that when it will get executed. So if you try to mix them together, obviously there will be problems. So to avoid any such type of problem, Salesforce has imposed this rule to make sure that you do not do anything wrong for the resources and for the Salesforce system. This is the basic definition of future method, and this is the basic structure of future method. Okay, future methods are typically used to do the callouts to external web service. Okay, if you are making callouts from a trigger or after performing a DML operation, then you should use the future method. Okay, if you do the callouts from trigger directly, then it would hold the database connection open for the whole transaction, and you will from the trigger itself you will go to the third party, and the third party will take its own time to get the data, fetch the data, and then send you the data, and then you will get it within Salesforce. So it will keep the transaction open for the whole execution time, and you do not have infinite time. So sooner or later you will end up having the governor limits there. So future method is a way by which you will say that, okay, your transaction will run synchronously, but the callout part you want to move to the future method, so that callout will happen in the back end, and it will get its own governor limits. It will not be dependent on the synchronous transactions governor limits, so that whatever time your third party system is taking, or whatever time your own system is taking to do the call out, fetch the results and anything, it will not be counted as a CPU timeout, or it will not be counted as a time for the synchronous transaction. So by this way you will get additional governor limits, and you will also be able to break the transaction into asynchronous way. So it will be a win-win situation for you. Never try to do the callouts from the triggers directly, because you will end up hitting the governor limits very quickly. And to do the callouts, you also need to make sure that callouts equals to true. Okay, callout equals to true. There will no S. Okay, all right. There is another use case. Okay, so let me first write it down here. The first use case we talk about is to do the callouts to external web services. Okay, this is the major use case of future method, and they will definitely ask you in the interview. The second thing is that whenever we have to avoid the mixed DML operations, or isolate DML operations on different S object types to prevent mixed DML errors. Okay, so now what is the question is, what is mixed DML error? Okay, see, mixed DML error is an error which occurs whenever you try to perform the two DMLs within the same transaction, one DML on the setup object and other DML on the non-setup object. Setup objects are basically the system objects which are used by Salesforce internally, or for the assignment purpose, or for the purpose which hold the ownership of something. So when we talk about the setup objects, we have user object, which is a major setup object. Then we have group object. Okay, these kind of objects holds the ownership of a particular record, ownership of a group of records, so that they in a way controls the visibility of those records as well, and what you can do with those records. Okay, so in the Salesforce transaction, these are the setup objects. And if you talk about non-setup object, other objects whichever you create, like account, contact, and custom objects, whichever you create, are the non-setup object. Okay, so let's say you have one transaction on which you are updating an account. Okay, and in the same transaction you are updating the role of account owner or profile of account owner. So Salesforce will assume that because you are updating an account, okay, and you are changing the profile of the account owner, that profile change might restrict this account owner to view the account, or to accommodate whatever you were updating on the same account. Okay, so Salesforce has prevented you to do any such thing in Salesforce, because this might cause you the data visibility issue. You might change the account owner's profile, and now the new profile might not even have the view permission on the account, whereas you updated the account in the same transaction. So that is not possible in Salesforce for you to do these two things together in the same transaction. So within a single transaction, you cannot perform two DML operations, one on the setup object and one on the other non-setup objects. So for that, Salesforce has given you the option to use the future methods. any one of the thing you should move to the future method, and one thing you should keep on doing in the synchronous transaction. So earlier I told you one scenario where we created an offboarding process. Okay, so offboarding process means that we were deactivating user. This is operation on the setup object, and then we were also, changing the ownership of all the opportunities this particular user is owning, and we were changing it to someone else. Okay, we were also changing the ownership of opportunities. So all the opportunities on which this current user were the owner, we were changing it to users manager. Okay, if we try to do this in a single transaction, this will give us a DML error. Okay, because what we are trying to do is that this is deactivating user is an operation on the setup object, and changing the ownership is an operation on the non-setup object. This cannot be done in a single transaction. No matter if you try it with the trigger, or if you try it with the process builder, or if you try it with the flows, this will not work. Okay, so to do that, you need to move one of these things to asynchronous apex future method. Okay, i I have created a flow for the offboarding. Let me see if I can show you that. No, this is not available in this org. Just a second. So anybody has any doubt in the mixed DML error?
Yes, Mohit, could you repeat again what is the mixed DML error actually? I missed that.
Okay, just a second, I'll show you. Okay. All right, I'll show you. So see, mixed DML error is basically an error whenever we try to perform the DML statement on setup object and non-setup object in the same transaction. Okay, so let's say we have to deactivate a user. We have a use case where we have to deactivate a user, but before deactivating the user, we need to check all the accounts and opportunities he is currently owner of, and then we need to change the ownership of those accounts and opportunity, and new owner should be the user's manager, or the current user which we are going to deactivate, his manager should now be the owner of those records. Okay, so in a single transaction, we need to deactivate the user, and we also need to change the ownership of accounts and opportunities. Okay, so if we try to perform this with the help of trigger, or with the help of the flows, we will get the mixed DML error. Okay, so here you can see this flow. Okay, this is the screen by which we will select which user we want to deactivate, and to which user we want to change the ownership to. Okay, simple, very simple. And then we will fetch the accounts currently owned by this user, contacts owned by this user, and we will update the ownership in the synchronous transaction. But when it comes to deactivate the user, we are calling an apex class. Okay, we are calling an apex class, and this class holds the, I'll show you what this class is doing. Okay. So now you can see that whatever ownership change we needed to do, we did in the same transaction, like in the synchronous way. We got all the accounts and then we changed the ownership of it. Okay. Here we changed the ownership of it, assigned a new owner. Similar thing we did for contact, but when it came to deactivate the user, we called an Apex class. Okay. And in this Apex class, we are calling another Apex class user offboarding helper, and this is a future method. Okay, if we remove the future part, then this will give us the mixed DML error, because then everything will happen in the same transaction. So we have to make sure that we are, doing one thing in the synchronous transaction, the other thing in the asynchronous future method, so that we will avoid the mixed DML error. Otherwise, we will get the mixed DML error. Okay, so I'm not really sure if it will work right now, because I've not tested, or even might have tested it couple of months ago. But that's what I actually wanted to tell you, that if we make it non-future method, or if we remove at the rate future, then this will start giving us the mixed DML error. Okay. So that's what you need to, remember, that this will happen. So any doubt on the mixed DML error, you can use this, you can, check this use case in your own developer org, and this will just be a very simple 5-6 line trigger. If you want to test it, you will be able to test it very easily. Okay. Any doubt on the mixed DML error, guys? This is a very important interview question from the future method. There are 3-4 questions comes from the future method, and this is one of the most important question. Okay. So any doubt, be sure you raised. All right.
Excuse me, Mohit.
Yep. Tell me.
Actually, where we use future annotation over the setup object or non-setup object.
You can use it on anything. It's not, there is no restriction if you want to use it on the setup object and non-setup object. You can use it on the non-setup objects as well, and you can use it on the setup objects as well. You have to just make sure that one thing should be done in the synchronous and other thing should be done in the asynchronous. So here I have used the future method on the setup object, like whenever we were deactivating the user. But I can deactivate the user in the flow itself, in the synchronous, and all these things I can do in the future method as well. So it depends on you, what is your use case. I wanted to, first change the ownership of record, then wanted to deactivate the user. Okay. And depending on your use case, you can see which one you are more comfortable with. And it's not like you only can do the future method in the setup objects and all. There is no such restriction. Okay.
Okay, understood.
Good. All right.
Sir, will you please go to the console?
Sorry.
Console.
Uh-huh.
So in the console, you have written string dot is blank. Inside the in blank is blank. You have written the current user dot manager ID. I never written like this. Like inside the is blank, we can
Which
write
line?
something.
Sorry, line number.
13 13.
Okay. So here I'm just checking that if current users manager is not blank. That's it.
Okay. I
So
think the
current,
way
this is,
you have written it is different. Like we are
yeah. I mean, there are
checking.
multiple ways to write it. See, current users manager is blank, not. So if current users manager is not blank, then I will do this,
Okay.
put this in the map. See, there are
And
different
string
ways.
dot.
String dot is just to make sure that we are typecasting it to a string as well. Okay, because is
Okay,
blank
got the point.
works, is blank works really good with the string. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that is why.
Okay. Every time I'm just creating one a list or something else dot is blank and just taking, no?
Is
Yeah,
null, is blank, and I see I could have
yeah.
directly written current user dot manager not equals to null as well. That should also be fine.
Mhm.
It's not
Okay,
but
legit.
whenever we use I don't prefer to use directly not equals to null or something, because in the peer reviews sometimes your senior or your architect might say that this is not the better way of writing it, so you use the inbuilt methods or functions. So it just a different ways of writing, will not change anything.
Okay,
Okay,
got point. Yeah.
and all right, future methods first part is done, like why we use it in the for the mixed GML. The other very important question is that what we can pass in the future method. Okay, so that is also a very important interview question, like what we can pass in the future method. We cannot directly pass the S objects or the list of S object in the future method. There is a limitation in the future method, like we cannot directly pass the uh, S object or the list of S object. We can only pass the primitive data types. Okay, list of IDs or ID or any primitive data type we can pass, but we cannot directly pass the list of S object or the S object. Okay, the reason why object can't be passed as an argument to future method is because the object can change between the time you call the method and the time it actually got executed. Okay, so in this case, sometimes what happens is that from trigger, let's say we called a future method. Okay, and trigger will stop finish executing straight away, where but future method will not finish executing straight away. It will get executed in its own execution time, and it may take some time. So that is why Salesforce has not allowed us to pass the uh, S object directly. So because in the let's say in the trigger you have changed something on the S object, okay, and that execution got executed and saved in the database. But in the future method, if they allow you to pass the same S object, then it may also change. Or whenever you let's say you passed an account, okay, you passed an account from your future method to your trigger, okay, sorry, from your trigger to your future method, okay, and let's say at the time when you passed it, accounts owner was user A, okay, so you passed an account from your trigger to your future method, and owner of an account was user A. But later on within the same trigger, you change the owner to B. But whatever you passed to your future method will still have a user A as a owner, because you changed the owner from user A to user B later in your trigger. Okay, so it might be possible that at the time when you execute the future method might not have the latest value of that particular object. That is why Salesforce has restricted us to pass the S objects directly. Okay, we can still pass the ID and then we can query based on ID. But what advantage it will bring is that you need to query at that time. So you will get the latest values. Okay, but if you directly pass an S object, that S object might still hold the older values. Okay, so that is why Salesforce has not allowed us to pass the S objects directly. Getting my point?
Yes, sir.
All right. So this is also a very important interview question. They will ask that why we cannot pass the S objects directly from triggers to future method, or why we cannot pass the S objects directly as an argument in the future method. So the reason is that because Salesforce wants to make sure that we do not get the older values of that S object in the future method, because by the time when it gets executed, it may have the value might have changed in the back end via some other synchronous transactions. So Salesforce has allowed us to pass the IDs, and then you can query based on the IDs so that you can avoid the mismatch between the value in the transactions. So that is the that is the main reason of it. Okay, so what I was trying to say is that, let me show you let me close this. If I try to pass a list of account, okay, and try to save this, see, it will give us error that future method do not support parameter type of list. Okay. And the reason why it is giving us error is that because it does not support the account as a list. If I change it to ID, I'll be able to get the account list, and then based on this I can get the list of account I can just normally query it, select ID, my name from account where ID in account list. So when they ask you why Salesforce has not allowed you to pass the S object directly, they will also ask you what is the workaround to do that. So this is the workaround. You will pass the list of IDs and then you will query it. What advantage does it bring is that you will always get the latest value because you are querying right here. Okay, so based on this, you will be able to get the latest value of account. You will not have there will be no risk of having the older values in the future method and then doing some nasty thing in the transaction. Okay, so this is also a very important interview question. These two are, most of the time you will majorly get these two questions in the future method, like what is mixed DML error, how to avoid it with the help of future method, and why we cannot pass the as object directly in as an argument in the future method. Most of the time you will get these questions in the future method. Okay, this question is also a limitation of future method. Like now whenever you will talk about the limitations of future method, you can say that you can only pass the primitive data type. You cannot pass the S object or the list of S object directly in the future method. And make sure that whenever you get this question, you do not stop here. You explain everything, like why you cannot do that. If you know the logic behind it, you need to explain it to make a good impression on the interviewer. You need to explain it why Salesforce has not allowed this. There is a logic behind it, and the moment you tell the logic, the interviewer will get impressed, like, yes, you did something good. All right. Now we have all those sort of questions in the future method, like I call them illogical questions, but they ask a lot in the interviews, like calling the batch from future, calling the queuable from future. See, all these asynchronous apex have their own use cases, so we never mix match them because they have different use cases. Very rarely you will see them mix matching them. Mix matching schedulable and batch apex is fine because you schedule your batches, but apart from that you will never see mismatching, like calling queuable from future method or calling schedulable from the queuable apex. We never do that because they have their own use cases, and it is advisable to use future method whenever we have a use case of it, not unnecessarily try to use the future method. So future method we use to do the callouts from the trigger and to avoid the mixed DML error. Okay, and let's say you are getting a you are getting a CPU timeout in a transaction because of one thing which is happening in the same transaction. Sometimes you might need to avoid that thing, so you can use future method to avoid that as well, but that also is not a very specific use case of future method. So use case of future method is that whenever you have to do the callouts to a web service or whenever you have to avoid the mixed DML error. That's it. Whenever you have to perform some bulk data on something, we will not use future method because we have a batch apex for that, right? But for the interviewer's sake, they will ask a lot of interview questions. So we are going to cover those things here now. So question is, first question is, can we call another future method from a future method? Anybody want to answer this?
No, no.
No, actually, there are two ways here. Like, see, we cannot call, but while saving, it is not creating, showing the error, but while calling, it is giving the error.
So you are trying to say is that we will not get any compile time error. We'll be able to
Yeah,
save the code. but we will get an error when we try to execute it. Okay,
Execute
we
exactly.
will see this. Okay.
Yeah.
We have another sample future method too, which is not doing anything, just calling it. So I am going to use it. Sorry for the bad naming. All right, we will open the logs here. So we will be able to execute the code. Okay, so the synchronous transaction, the execute anonymous block got executed, but the moment it came to the future handler, this gave us the error. Okay, future method. See, this is the exception we got. We got the system.async exception. Future method cannot be called from a future or batch method. Okay, so that's what happened when you will, do this. So every time interviewer asks you that when can we call another future method from the future method, what you will say? No, we cannot do that. If we try to do that, we will get a runtime error, runtime async exception, that future method cannot be called from a future or batch method. Okay, make sure, yeah, tell the best possible way. Instead of just saying no or yes, try to tell the exact reason or exact logic or exact errors behind that. Okay, that will make a better impression than just saying yes or no, because if you just say yes or no, he will move on to the next question and will ask similar type of question again, where you lost an opportunity to explain the error message. Okay, so make sure that you do that. All right. From, can we call a Cubal epics from a future method? Anyone want to try
Yes.
that?
Yes. We can call.
All right. We have the Cubal epics. So we will try to see that. Okay. Let me open the trigger which we created the other day, from where we called all these things. It was contact trigger, right? All right. Let me save this. Now, if I try to run this, it will get executed. So your anonymous window ran and the Cubal handler also ran. See, so Cubal apex ran. Okay. But there is one limitation, is that only, I think you can only call one Cubal apex. If you try to do it multiple times, then you will get the error. Okay, see, you will get the error that too many Cubal jobs added to the queue. So you can add only one Cubal job. Okay, got this error? This is the error you will get if you try to add more than one Cubal job from a future method. As I told you, this is not a perfect use case to call a Cubal apex from the future method. That is why Salesforce has put a restriction around this, is that you can only queue one job. Okay. So whenever somebody asks you that, can you call a Cubal apex from a future method, what you will say? Yes, we can call that, but we are only limited to one queuable job. We cannot add more than that. Okay,
Okay.
everybody will be able to explain this.
Yes.
Perfect.
Then Mohit, what is the reason we can't include that another future method and batch apex, and why we can with queuable method? What is the reason?
See, okay, so you're trying to ask why we cannot add another future method. See, the first future method itself is not, I mean, we are not sure that when it will get executed. And if we add another future method on top of it, then that will, create more uncertainties around this. Why it is possible with the queuable apex is that you can have just one queuable apex. So if you want to queue something with the future method, like if you just want to do one thing in the queuable apex, but if you try to mimic the logic of chaining queuable jobs and all, then Salesforce will not allow. Logically, from the Salesforce point of view, there is no point of calling another asynchronous from one asynchronous. Salesforce has not allowed you. Why we are handling this and why we are dealing this? Because interviewer asked this. But Salesforce has strictly told you not to try and mix the different asynchronous epics with each other, because they have their own use cases. Okay. The only thing Salesforce allows us, or ask you to do, is to schedule your batches. That's it. That's the time when you mix the schedulable epics and batch epics. Otherwise, Salesforce never recommend to mix any of the asynchronous transactions together. Okay, so nothing of these things are logical. It's just from the interview point of view we are trying to cover. Okay.
Okay, but still, I want little bit more explanation about why we can able to add the future queuable method in future method. Just a little bit clarity.
Okay, I'll try to find more clarity on this for you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. And then we will talk about the schedulable epics. Okay. What will be the answer, guys?
Yes. I have only one line answer.
Yes, we can try that. We can do that. So now if I try to execute it, I will be able to execute it. See, job will get executed. Even if we try to do multiple, we should be able to do that.
Sir, I think there is a limit now. Like we can schedule only up to 100 jobs.
Yep, up to 100 jobs you can only. So that is the limit applicable on the schedulable apex from any places you try to execute it. Okay. And that limit will still be respected here as well. So if I try to, schedule it one more time with a different name, there is no such uh, restriction like we had in the queuable apex, like you can only queue one job. It should be sorry. And now if I try to execute, we should be able to do that. Okay. So if somebody asks you whether you will be able to call a schedulable apex from future method or not, you will say, yes, we will be. Okay. The other job should also come here.
And one more thing I heard, sir, about the future, like we can call only up to 10 jobs. In not more than 10 jobs, we can. No.
I think it is 50. So in single transaction, you can have around 50 future jobs.
No, no, not like that. Like from a particular Apex class, Apex feature method, we can call only up to 10 call outs, like 10, not call outs, 10
Different
Apex
methods, right?
invocations. Yeah, Apex
Yeah.
invocations.
Hmm.
Is it right?
Yes. Just a second. I have written it somewhere. So I'll show you that. And we will find it. Just a second. Huh? I just want to see why the other job is not getting scheduled. The 01. Okay. So this one is already in the schedule. So that is why it is denying us to, re-execute it. Let me just change the name of it. 02, 03. Save the class. Now execute it. Yeah. Now we'll be able to do that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. How many future calls we can have in a transaction? Okay. You can have up to 50 future methods call per transaction, and you can have up to 25 lakh future methods per 24 hours.
This is like a batch, like total 2,000.
This is, I think, the total. This is, I mean, this is included batches and conjunction, other future calls as well. So this will be accumulated limit. So it will also include future method as well as batches. Okay.
No, my question is like, see, not more than 10 methods we can call in per Apex invocation of the future, like that. Like in a future, particular future, let's say I have one future method, and inside that future method, I can call only up to 10 another methods. Got my point?
10 other future methods you're saying, right?
Not no future methods, a different method. Inside the future
Okay.
method, we cannot call the future, right?
Right. Yeah.
Another method, different type of method, like say batch, not batch, schedule or something else.
I'm not sure if I'm following it. So let's say we have this future method. Okay. So what you're trying to say is that I can call 10 other different methods within this future method, not more
Yeah,
than that.
yeah. I'm not sure on that point, but I think so.
Okay, we can try that. We can check that. So let's say
We have one schedule method, right? So we can.
let's not talk. Let's talk about normal methods only. Yeah, we will
Okay.
talk about normal methods. So sample future method 2. I will make it non-future. Okay.
Okay.
And then let's have a for loop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
No problem with this. We were able to do that. Now, let me change it to, let's say 20. Let's wait for the future handler. Ran 20 times.
Okay, means we can call.
Let me make it 50, okay?
Mhm.
I mean, we are checking different thing now. Let's make it
Yeah, just
55.
if you're taking 50, it will run 51 times. Starting
Yeah.
with 0.
No, I just want to break it. So if it is able to take more than 50 also, it will not see the what we are talking about is that 50 future methods per transaction. This is different. Like this is different thing. I'll see what you're trying to say. I mean, I have also seen 10 methods called per transaction, but not exactly sure what it is. So I'll also check that. This certainly is
Okay.
not this thing, right? Otherwise we would
Yeah,
have got error.
error is.
So we will check that. And it cannot be other future methods call because we cannot call another future method from future anyway. Okay.
Right.
And within single transaction, we can have around 50 future methods called. So it is not that also. So it could be something else, which I will check. Don't worry. Okay.
Okay.
And if we try to call the batch epics, we will get the similar error like we've got the first time with the future method. So if I try to do this, see, this is the error. Just a second. Database.execute batch cannot be called from the batch start, batch execute, or future method. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the error you will get. This is slightly different than what you got for the future method. But the message it is trying to convey is same, is that you cannot call a batch or a future method from a future method. Okay. So that's what we will be focusing. And I have also added a couple of questions on the sheet for the future method. Okay, if I show you the sheet, what it is, just a second.
Sir, one more question. Like interviews are asking like, how can we pass the S object or the S class object as a parameter from the future method? Like see, we can call only we can pass only primitive data type.
Yeah, so
Primitive
we will
type of.
pass the IDs, and then we will query the ID. That's
Oh,
what I,
like that we have did. Okay, okay,
yeah,
got it.
that's the workaround to do this. Okay. So in the future method, if you go here, I have added few, just a second, where is future method, right? Asynchronous apex. Under asynchronous apex, I have added couple of questions here. Okay. So you can go through that. Many of these I've already covered. Okay. And you guys can keep on adding your questions here. Okay.
Mohit, one more question. What is the limitations of future method? Object cannot we call that, and what is other others?
Object cannot see, this is already been added. We cannot directly pass the S object, and the future methods are not really good to perform the bulk data processing, or whenever we have to perform something on large amount of data. Future methods are not really good use case. Future methods does not return us a job ID. Okay, so you will never get sure about when your future method actually performed and all. So with the other asynchronous processes, it is easy to debug with the help of job ID, but future method does not return any job ID. So it becomes really difficult. So those are the particular limitations of future method. And we have other asynchronous ways to deal with those limitations. Okay, limitations of one is kind of advantage of other, like job. If we do not get job ID in the future method, we cannot pass the primitive non-primitive data type. Those things have been overcome by the queuable apex. In the queuable apex, you will get an option to pass the S objects directly, or list of S objects directly. You will also get the job ID. So we will talk about queuable apex tomorrow. Queuable and schedulable apex we will talk tomorrow, and then we will talk about the batch apex.
Okay.
Okay.
And one more point I want to add here, like we cannot use the future annotation methods into the visual post controller in the
Yes, there are
constructor.
there are there are many limitations in that terms as well. I have written those, and you guys will be able to go through that. So, other is that the get content method, the get content as a PDF method can't be used in the method with the future annotation. So, if you have a future method within that method, you cannot use the get content and get content as a PDF methods. And there are you cannot future methods can't be used in the visual force controller in get method name or set method name, nor in the constructor. So I've written these things. You guys can go through that and you'll be able to understand. The other important question is that the best practices of future method, which I have written here as well, and you also can go through that. You just need to make sure that your future method executes as fast as possible. You're not changing other things to your future method, to make them slow, because future methods are basically kind of improvements done over batch epics takes a lot of time, and future method is basically for the use case where you have to do something quickly asynchronously. So make sure that they execute as fast as they can. Okay, if you are doing the callouts, make sure you bundle all the callouts together and then do a single callout rather than calling out for each and every record. So let's say if you are doing a callout from the trigger, instead of doing callout inside the trigger.new for every record, try to bundle it and try to send it to the web service or to external third-party system as a single callout rather than doing it for one callout at a time. Okay, and testing your future method is also really important. Make sure that you test it in a bulk, like you should test it to check if it is able to process more than 200 records or not. Okay, and whenever you have a use case to use whenever you have a large data set, then always try to use the batch epics rather than the future method, because future methods looks very simple, but they are not really good in performance when it comes to performing the operations on a large data set, because Salesforce has created batch epics for that purpose. Batch epics are optimized to perform operations on the large data set. Okay, so those are the kind of the best practices we have. And see, most of the time in the future method, you will get, see, when I get a question from the asynchronous apex, let's say if somebody asks me the question from the future method or something, I kind of pull all the asynchronous apex related topics together. So if somebody asks me why we cannot pass the data from the S object directly from future method to future method as an argument. So I'll say that this is the reason why we cannot, but this limitation has been removed in the queuable apex, and we can use the queuable apex if we need to pass the S objects directly rather than doing the workaround on the future method. We can use the queuable apex, which allows us to pass the. So in a way, I have gave him the hint to ask a question from the queuable apex, because I knew that already. And if he asks the question, that will be a win for me. If not, then also I kind of showcase my skill on that particular topic. Like, we can use it. Queuable apex is a, and even if not, if it comes to normal asynchronous, if he asks only question from future method, you can say that there are other ways to do things asynchronously. Those are those are batch apex, queuable apex, and schedulable apex. They have their own use cases, and if he feels, he will ask question from it. If he does not, we are not going to lose anything by just coining those terms in the interview, right? So never treat interview like someone is trying to prove his point or someone is right or wrong. It's more about a technical discussions, more or less. Okay. And we sometimes interviewer will say that no, this is not possible, and you even know that yes, this is possible. Be very firm and polite when you say that. Never very aggressive in terms of no, this is not possible, or never be very assertive in your approach. Just be firm and polite. Even if, let's say, interviewer is saying wrong, that is okay. You can say that, okay, as per my understanding, this is what I feel, but okay, I'll try to explore it more. Or don't be very aggressive in terms of saying no, or in terms of saying that no, you are wrong. Okay, you obviously can say, but it's not like just say it very politely. Okay. See, callouts equals to true, you put with the with the future method annotation, basically to make sure that callouts are allowed. If you are not make callouts equals to true and then you do the callouts with it, it will give us error. Okay. So if within the future method you are doing a callout and callout is not equals to true, you will not be able to do the callouts. It is required for you to provide callouts equals to true. Okay. All right. So tomorrow we will cover the queuable apex and schedulable apex. And if you guys have any question on future method, we will cover that. I'll be finishing early today because today is Monday. It will take me an hour to go through my emails and all. So I will do that, and I'll share the notes. You guys need to go through the notes as well. I have given a couple of examples as well, like how to do the callouts from the triggers with the help of future method, and how we can overcome the limitations of passing just the primitive data. So you can go through those examples. Okay, and I have also written a how to test a future method with a sample example on test classes. Okay. All right, everyone.
Mohit, what is the reason it didn't do that large number of records? Future
Sorry?
method.
Sorry, I did not
You
get it.
said one of the limitation is it didn't do the operations on huge number of records, right? One of the limitation.
See, okay, you can call a future method and perform operation on the large data set as well. But you need to understand that Salesforce has created batch apex for that. Batch apex is optimized to be used on a large data set, whereas future method is not optimized. Future method is not a tool to handle the large data set. Okay, it's not like whether you can do or not. Obviously, you can do those things in the future method as well, but it will be a bad utilization of resources because future methods are not optimized to handle the large data set. If you try to do it, it may or may not break. But batch apex is something which is optimized to handle the large data set, so it will not break if you try to do the large data set operation on the batch apex. Okay, but it's not like you cannot do that on the operation on the future methods. See, you are allowed to do that call out from the trigger as well, but why you do not do that? Because it is not the best utilization of resources. As a Salesforce developer, when we are working in a multi-talent environment, it is our responsibility to use the resources wisely. Okay, when you actually work in a project or company, it is not, and most of the time it will not be about whether you can do this or not. It will most of the time will be about whether you should do it or not. Okay, so
Yeah.
whenever it comes to that point, always think about, is it a good idea to do it in the future method? If not, then we will do it with the other possible options available. Okay, in the interviews, see, interviewers cannot, we cannot say those things in an interviews that you are asking an illogical question, because in the interview they can ask anything, and here we are covering all these questions from the interview point of view. That is why I'm even catering those questions. But otherwise, I myself never ask these questions, can you call future from batch or batch from question, because I find those questions very illogical. What is the need of asking a question which you will not do in the real time job? But we cannot say those things in an interview, that why are you asking this, or why you are asking a bad question. When you go, let's say you're playing cricket and you go for batting, you cannot ask a bowler to bowl a yorker to you or a bouncer to you. He will bowl whatever he want to bowl. Okay, so based on those, we will face them, duck them, or play our shots depending on if we know the answers of it or not. Okay,
Yeah,
but
that's why I want to know every answer, the counter answer, because we don't know, right? Whatever
see,
they are.
don't, yeah, I understand that you want to know the every answer, and this is good as well, but always remember, there will always be few questions which you will not be able to answer. Okay, there will always be few questions which will make you uncomfortable, no matter how many years of experience you gain, no matter how much you are prepared. Okay, there will always be question, and if that question comes which you are not prepared, you just need to stick with your basics, and you just need to tell him that this is what you know about this particular thing. If this is something which you don't know, then just stick to the basics, and whatever you know as per the basics, just try to convey that. Okay, there will always be questions which you might not be able to answer. Okay, and it is irrespective of the experience. So if I go and give interview as a technical architect, there will be 10 questions I'll not be able to answer, because I will be able to answer all the questions, almost all the questions as a Salesforce developer. But now when I give interview, I'll be getting the architect level questions. So which I might not be able to answer, because I do not deal with those things on my day-to-day life. So it's okay. It's all, I mean, there should always be the scope of improvement, even in the interviews as well. And interviewers also know that they're not expecting you to know 100% of all the topics. What they want to know is that if you know a particular topic, how much you know about it, and even if you don't know a topic, how comfortable you are with that topic and the questions of that topic, and you should have just a positive energy that you will be able to learn a new topic if you are not able. So I used to give interviews a lot, and they used to ask a lot of platform event question, but I did not get a chance to work on platform event earlier. So I was not able to answer, but I convinced him that the moment I get this platform event related thing, I'll be able to explore it. So sometimes we just need to, make sure that they are confident on us, that we'll be able to. And for that, we need to be confident on ourselves first. Then only we'll be able to convince the interviewer. Okay.
Yeah, Mohit.
All right. All right, guys. Then I'll talk to you tomorrow, and we will, continue the same things. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Feel free to ping me in case of any doubt. Okay.
Thank you, sir.